KE7 is one of the most popular LMGs available to the support class in Battlefield 5. And that for good reason. It combines reliable damage output with a relatively good fire rate and manageable recoil for a relatively attractive medium to close quarter, maybe even medium to long range weapon that is capable of taking out many targets at many different ranges and in many different situations. All of that, of course, with the added bonus of a bipod, which can extend its range when used to essentially any range you want to, thanks to its higher degree of stability. That being said though, we're still going to be taking a closer look at the stats of the KE7 in today's weapon review, as well as of course the specializations available and the ones that I would recommend for the weapon, how it compares to some of the competition out there, both within the LMG class of weaponry and outside of it, and lastly of course we're going to cover how to get the most out of this weapon when using it on the battlefield. Starting off though with the stats, as we always do. The KE7 brings the same reliable damage model found on pretty much every LMG in Battlefield 5. Maximum damage of 25, minimum damage of 18.5. Giving you of course a guaranteed 4-shot kill up until and including 10 meters, a 5-shot kill up until and including 50 meters, and from that point onwards a 6-shot kill, eventually arriving of course at that previously mentioned minimum damage of 18.5. This comes paired with a relatively high, for the LMG class of weaponry as of now, fire rate at 568 rounds per minute, though that can be increased further with the help of certain specializations. Then in terms of its magazine size, things are sadly not quite as nice. At 25 shots, it's not exactly enough for much more than usually 2 targets in most scenarios, and the reload times are relatively abysmal, meaning not only that you are reloading this weapon relatively frequently, but also doing so is going to take you a relatively long time, with each reload taking you 3.75 seconds, independent of whether you still have any shots left in your mag or chambered in the weapon. In terms of recoil then, things aren't quite as bad as they are in terms of magazine and reload times, with a vertical of 0.7 and each consecutively automatically fired shot taking off 0.045 degrees of vertical recoil. In other words, your recoil becomes more manageable, less noticeable as you fire this weapon longer. On the other hand, then your horizontal recoil is at the mediocre to higher level given the fire rate of the weapon at 0.24 to the left and right, and these spread values are what you would expect from any LMG. While your minimum spread while standing and aiming down sight sitting at 0.15, your minimum spread while moving and aiming down sight at 0.4, and your hip fire typically relatively poor at 4.5 as found on most LMGs. But with these stats out of the way, let's talk about these specializations, because there is some interesting choices to be made when it comes to the KE7. The first is between whether you would prefer quick reload, helping you a little bit with that relatively poor reload that the weapon has as of now, or if you would prefer quick aim. Both are attractive options, the quick aim being the one I personally have gone for, because I tentatively like to fire my KE7, for a matter of fact all my LMGs and almost all of my assault rifles while aiming down sight because their hipfire is relatively poor. But equally understandable is the upgrade to the reload times given how poor those reload times are. Once you've made your choice there, then you have to move on between either the left hand or the right hand side, with the left hand side giving you a more close quarter focused KE7 with upgrades to your hipfire accuracy thanks to the enhanced grip and upgrades to your fire rate thanks to the light bolt, raising the fire rate of the weapon from 568 rounds per minute all the way up to 635. If you go for the more accuracy-focused, medium-range-focused KE7 on the right-hand side of the specialization tree, you'll be looking at a custom stock, increasing your accuracy while aiming down sight and moving simultaneously, and a ported barrel, decreasing the horizontal recoil of this weapon by extension, making it more manageable and more accurate at pretty much any engagement distance. Then again, this affects mostly the more medium-long-range engagements, not so much the close quarter. Then lastly, you have the choice between the light and stock, giving you 60% faster movement while aiming down sight, or the barrel bedding, giving you better accuracy while standing still. I personally find that I have in the FG42 a very capable close quarter focused LMG, and thus don't need another one in the KE7. Further, if I go down the left-hand specialization tree for this weapon, I basically have a slightly inferior FG42, slightly bigger mag, but worse reload times, and yes, slightly better range performance, but not much, given that I've not got any recoil upgrades on this weapon, and the fire rate increase doesn't exactly help there either. So for me, it's the right-hand side of the specialization tree, although whether you go for quick reload or quick aim makes very little difference. And the same can be said for whether you go for the light and stock, giving you better accuracy while strafing back and forth, something I tend to do a lot in my personal playstyle, and thus my personal choice in this occasion, or if you go for the higher degree of accuracy while standing still. Then again, an argument can be made, if you require higher accuracy and you're going to be standing still already, you may as well go prone or find yourself another bit of cover and set up your bipod, at which point accuracy is no problem anymore. But with the specializations to one side then, let's start talking about how this weapon compares to some of the competition out there. Because the KE7 does have quite a lot of competition, thanks to the damage model which is essentially shares with not only all LMGs, but also all assault rifles. Well, the competition is not only the LMGs, but also the assault rifles. Thus, weapons like the Sturmgewehr 1.5, the STG-44, or even the Riberol are all weapons that will be directly competing with the KE7, alongside, of course, your usual Bren gun, Lewis gun, and, of course, FG-42. In terms of what space it occupies is relatively clear. It's denoted by its fire rate between the FG-42, Sturmgewehr 1.5s of the world, or even the STG-44, and weapons like the Bren and Lewis, more accuracy-driven weapons, or even the Riberol. Thus, it's more of a medium-long, medium-close weapon. In other words, it really does specialize at the medium range, everything slightly before that, and everything slightly after that. But nothing too far. It's not a medium-long range weapon, it's also not a medium-close quarter weapon. That would be something like the FG-42 or Sturmgewehr 1.5 for a matter of fact. And while I do find it an extremely effective weapon, it does face very stiff competition, in particular from the STG-44, and I'm not sure if I would pick it over the STG-44. Then again, it's a support weapon and not an assault weapon, and comes with the bonus of other gadgets and of course ammo to dispense to your team, and when making up a decent squad, you need the different classes one way or another if you really want to be as effective as you possibly can. Thus, the KE7 is not a weapon I am reluctant to choose on the battlefield, and I've found very little difficulties being relatively effective with it. As hopefully today's gameplay is a plentiful example of, you can take this weapon into relatively close quarters, and if you've got the quicker reaction times, the superior aim, you're going to be able to dominate one way or another. The same can go for the more medium long ranges, where the weapon is of course closer to its home base, which is at medium range. All in all, if you want to use this weapon effectively, you're going to be using it at, let's say, somewhere around 25 to 75 meters of engagement distance. Nothing too close quarters, because weapons such as the assault rifles, and especially the SMGs there, thanks to their better hipfire, will be able to make short work of you, not only in terms of damage, but also in terms of ease of use and consistency of results, because your hipfire is atrocious, and you will thus be facing your opponents, which will be hipfiring and AD spamming, while trying to aim down sight, which isn't exactly an ideal scenario. And at long range as well, there's better LMGs out there, and there is the semi-automatics and of course the bolt action rifles for the scout, which will make relatively quick work of you. That's also relevant for your use of bipod. Don't stick around with your bipod too long, eventually you're going to get your head taken off. I found the main challenge in using the KE7 really to be its magazine and its reload time, so managing that relatively correctly and making sure that you consistently get at least 2 kills out of every mag is very important if you want to use this weapon more towards the medium range, close quarter ranges. So those 25-35 meters where if you don't have your targets and your shot on target, well, they're going to push you into a scenario where you're at a disadvantage. That being said, it's not the hardest weapon to use out there, and it is a good deal of fun when you get it right. But I, of course, would love to know what you think about the KE7 and what your experiences are with this weapon. So leave that, as well as, of course, your usual video suggestions and feedback down below in the comments, or hit me up with it on Twitter. If you found the video helpful, enjoyable, or at all entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. But with all that being said, I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you in the next Battlefield 5 video.